Here's a quick little tutorial for a 1956 Ford F100. I'm going to be replacing these. I don't want to replace the entire assemblies inside the doors. I just want to replace these particular shafts. Both of these are stripped. You can see that there's some upholstery that was done on here that's a little bit thicker. So these pieces are a little bit shorter than what you need, especially if you put that escutcheon on here. If you just put the handle and the window handle right here, you can still get that to work, but if you put the escutcheons on, it's just too thick. So these are the parts from the other door. You can see that they're pretty stripped, torn up. They wouldn't really hold the handles anymore. They would just kind of spin around a little bit. They'd grab enough to roll the windows up and open the door, but you could feel them spinning. So I went to Sac Vintage, and they have these parts. You can see that they're just a 1/4 of an inch longer, which makes all the difference. So this is the finished door, the driver's door I started with, and the passenger side. So I just needed to get in here and get those off. It's kind of complicated. We're going to try to do it like we did with the driver's door, which I was able to do without welding, but we'll see how modified the insides of this door have been. Alright, so I pulled off the panel. So there's a couple things that we have to do. One, just inside here is a track that holds the window as it goes inside the door. We've got to take that off first. And those bolts are right here, here, and here. Once that comes off, what we need to do is take off this little mechanism. Then this is the bottom of the door lever. So this has to get detached so we can get to the door lever and to the window. So the screws are right here, here, and here. My driver's side door, I had one of the screws hidden by a piece of paper that was indicating some maintenance that had been done on the vehicle previously, so I missed that part. The inside of the door, we've got, I think it's just these three for the handle, and for the window, it's these two here and these two down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out all of these first. Well, actually, I'm going to start with the window. I'm going to get this little rail off real quick. All right, I got the top one off. Working these last two, and then this is just going to come right off once I get this out. Should just be able to reach around inside. Something or other. All right, so this is that window rail. So I think I'm going to do is just keep all this stuff together. That way I know exactly where these bolts go back. All right, so with this mechanism here, I forgot this one. We had this. Once this one's pulled out, then this whole assembly here will pop in and swing down inside, and I'll show you how to take it off of the arm that's pinning it over here to the post here. Alright, so one more thing I forgot to mention is that we actually have to take off the lock assembly. There's a little circle on the end of this post here, and that's actually wraps around something that's in here, so I have to pull that off before I can get to that. So to get that off, I don't know if you're familiar with this or not, but there's a little tiny piece of metal shim right here, which I didn't install back. I replaced these not too long ago. I didn't put that all the way back in, so what I'm going to do is grease that up really good. and then it'll slide right back in nice and flush with this door rather than a little bit exposed like this is. So what you need to do is pull this out. I recommend like getting a screwdriver in there and just working it out. And then obviously keep one hand on this, because once it's released, you don't want this falling out and scratching this up on the floor. Alright, so this is what that little piece looks like. So I'm going to put some wheel bearing grease on here, get this nice and cleaned up. It was a little too oxidized to go in really well before, but once you put a little bit of grease on there, that's going to make that real nice. And then this little guy, you should just be able to grab. Now we can slide that right on out. So there's that little shaft that goes through a little pin that's inside our mechanism there. Put those off to the side. And now we should be able to get in here. Alright, I had this a little bit stuck, so you're trying to wiggle this around, it doesn't really go in. So what you have to do is you actually have to give it a shove, and what it'll do is it'll spin that little knob there. So if you grab right, or push right there on that shaft, it'll go right on in, and then this assembly swings on down. Now what you got to do is on the back of this assembly, and it attaches right here. So what you just have to do is twist this little guy until you get it to the right spot, and then it just snaps right on off. All right. So that attaches to this little dude right here. So we're gonna clean this all up. It's got a good bit of oxidation on it. We'll just make it nice and shiny so this mechanism works great. We don't have to replace it. Alright, I still have the window in the up position, so I think now that I've removed all these bolts, the 3 that are here, I think this is just going to push in and then come right out. Let's take a look. Alright, so what the issue is the arm for this is still in the way. So what I'm going to do is drop the window while these screws are still in here and secure. Then I'll unhitch the window, leave it inside the bottom of the door here. Then with this undone, then I'll be able to undo this, take it out, and then I can get to this. There's a bar that comes behind this mechanism right here, which is pinning it inside, so you actually have to take the window one off first. Alright, so I've just temporarily put the handle on for the window. I'm going to start bringing the window down. Now you got to be careful. It's still connected to the shaft here, but there is no rail on the back side now. We've already taken that off, so you got to be real careful about this window. Looks like it's coming down real nice. Just keep it coming down. And now it's down. Alright, so here's how it attaches right here. It's hard to see, you might be able to focus right here, but there's a little tiny clip right there. And what you gotta do is hook a little tiny screwdriver in there, and this will pull out. Pulling it off isn't so difficult, it's putting it back on. That's kind of the trick. But you want to make sure you're gonna have 2 washers, then the spring, then this round washer, which basically mirrors this other track, and this is what the window slides up and down with this, and the spring just pushes that up against there to hold it nice and tight. You want to keep track of the order of these really close. And let's see if I can pull that out. Alright, so here's that clip. Ended up pulling it out a little bit already. All right, so what I did for the other one to get this out was I used set pin basically for finish nails, and I am going to just go to town pushing these until this thing finally gives up. Now I have a vise, so I've got the jaws up as close to the edge as I can so it won't bend the metal too much, but I might have to bend it back into shape a bit. But I'm gonna go to town and push these 4 out right now. So what's happened is I've taken off the window and it's just now sitting at the bottom of the door. So now when I take those screws out up there, this whole mechanism here for the window should just come right off. All right, here's the 2 assemblies. This is the window assembly. And as you can see right here is the shaft that is all torn up and short that we're going to be replacing. So what we're going to have to do is cut off those 3 rivets. So access to the back isn't so great. So what we'll end up doing is cutting these. Now this is spring loaded inside, which is kind of surprising. So when you pop that off, be careful, don't get too surprised by that. And then once the tension's released off of this is spring loaded. There's the spring. So what we're going to want to do is take some vice grips and I'll lock it back here, lock on this arm so that won't release at all. All right, here's the 2 pieces. I got them apart. You can see that I've bent this one up pretty good. So what I'm gonna have to do is put it in my vise and see if I can get it as straight as I can again. And then this one, what I need to do is flatten down both of these ends really good. And what that will do is it'll make them a little bit longer, and then I'm gonna turn them into rivets when I go to close this whole assembly up again. All right, for this little guy, you probably want to take a good look at it before you start taking it apart. We do have a little spring right here, and we've got another spring on the bottom. You can tell where that goes from this little pop out right here. It just kind of sits right on in there, and then there's a little piece that it rides on to make sure it stays in place. So when I did the other side, I lost that little pin. So I'd recommend once you take this little guy off of the shaft here, that you go ahead and put it back together. So you've got this solid piece on the outside. You've got this little washer that's kind of bent to mirror the shape of that other one, the spring, a washer, and then this pin that's gonna hold it in. Now on this side is the welding part. Like these are supposed to be, from what I understand, 4 tabs, but what's happened is it looks like it's been taken out before. Then they I guess spot welded or something. So getting this out is going to be a little bit tricky, but I think we'll be able to get it back together again without actually having to do any welding. All right, for this mechanism, I've got to take this spring off, and then I've got to pull that out of a little hole that's cut into the side of there. All right, got that guy off. So now all I've got to do is press this guy out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a socket, and then I'm just going to use my vise to force it through. All right, so here's the new part. I'm going to use this socket because it fits in there. It's not going to snag on anything. So I'm going to put the base against that, push it through. And there it is, popped on out. Perfect. Another thing on this side is since these were welded, we've got a bit of raised right here, and we don't need any raised on here. We don't need this to be any thicker than it absolutely has to be for the rivet part to work. So I'm going to go ahead and file this down real quick with a Dremel. All right, file fit. You want to make sure that this is nice and snug. You don't want to get rid of more material than you absolutely have to. So you can see that those are sticking up just enough for us to go ahead and hand rivet those over. I've got a nice round hammer I like to use for that kind of work. So what I'm going to do is take this back apart, clean it up, put some wheel bearing grease in here, make sure that it's nice and functioning for years to come, and then we'll put this all back together. All right, so here it is with those tacked down. So what you do is you just butt that up as tight as you can against the metal, and then just ding away on each of these heads, and it's gonna take a lot of hits. So you're probably gonna hit each one, 50 plus times. You're trying to just do a little bit and round those heads out over the metal on the outside here, so it has a nice good connection. It's really sturdy, so that's how you do it without a weld. All right, so for this part, what I did is I butted the jaws, the vice grip, right up against this other part here. I took the pressure off, so you just have to mess with this to see which way it's gonna pull back. But what happens is once we cut off those three rivets right there and pop this out, what's holding it tight is that gear, and once we pull that gear free, this arm's going to want to go, and you want to make sure that it isn't going to go, that it's going to remain in this position so it doesn't zap around and get you. So we've got that secured with the vice grips. We're going to go ahead and cut those off now. The gear just slides off, so now the real fun part is pushing this guy out back to the vise. Once you get them down far enough, just give that center a little punch and they'll start popping right on out. And be careful because it is still, there's a spring on this. All right, got that little beast on off. So here's what we're looking at. All right, so let's go ahead and pull this guy on out. Get a little hung up on those threads right there, hold on. All right, so there's a spring in here that's a lot of fun to put back on. And there's the gear. So go ahead and pull the gear off. Probably can't do it one-handed. So here it is with those rivets ground down. I'm just going to put a little screwdriver underneath this edge and see if I can just go ahead and pull those through. So I sprayed this down with WD-40. You need to get some oil in here. It's hard to tell, but there's like little parts here that grab onto this piece of metal, so you just have to kind of brute force this thing out. It kind of stinks because it's going to bend this guy up, and we're going to have to put it back into this position so it fits into the that little slot that we just pulled it out of perfectly. I pulled out a lot of that grease that was in here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a socket right around this, and then I'm just going to push this through with the vise and hope I don't bend it up too badly. All right, so it looks like about 11/16 is about the right size to fit around that. You want it as tight as possible so we're not putting too much stress on this. And there it is. It's hard to tell, but this is the old part. You can see it's got like a little lip on the edge of those four corners, and that's what really holds it in tight. The new part doesn't have that. It's just kind of basically just going to sit in there, but don't worry, it's going to be nice and snug, so it's not going to fall out. So I clean these parts up a little bit with some chem tool just to make them nice and clean. Don't want the old gunk going back in. A nice new door basically. So I put this little piece right here, right? Drop it in, and I can see already that it's not laying flush. So I'm gonna have to put it back into shape. So what's happened is when I pushed through here, I spread these walls out. So I gotta bring them back into alignment a little bit. So I'm just gonna put them in my vise here and just crush those down real quick. All right, so here's all the players. You got to put the this guy through. The one-handed thing, it's a little tricky. The spring is going to go around the outside. This little part here goes to the fat part right there, and then one end of the spring attaches to this guy, and the other hangs on this one. So I like to put it together before I go ahead and drop it in. I did a whole bunch of fitting and bending of this part here, and now it fits just as flush as when you saw it when it first came out. Alright, so this is the easiest way that I found how to do it. What you want to do is put this guy back in, then this shaft goes on. This guy is going to go down on the shaft with the wide end over this little lip right here. Now for the spring. Alright, so just press the spring back into place. The one edge goes right there, the other edge goes right there. Lube it up. Then we're going to drop this guy right back on top. We're going to get him to sit, and then we're going to go get pop rivets. Snap them on in. There they are. So now you can go ahead and release the vice grips. Fantastic, all done. There's the new longer pole